Listen, the National Football League is an incredibly unforgiving landscape. It's a place where, literally, a single, split-second decision can alter the entire trajectory of a billion-dollar organization for a decade. Welcome to NFL Nexus. Today, we're embarking on a deep, completely unfiltered journey right into the heart of a franchise that is currently standing on an absolute razor's edge. This isn't just a recap. This is a cinematic explainer. We're doing a meticulous deep dive into the raw anatomy of the 2026 Houston Texans. We're looking at a team that's wrestling with staggering expectations, massive, franchise-altering financial decisions, and honestly, the haunting, lingering ghosts of a playoff collapse that shook their foundation to its absolute core. But hey, before we start dissecting this high-stakes narrative and looking at the microscopic details of their offseason tape, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and like this explainer, drop a comment below with your raw thoughts as we go through this, and if you truly want to support the deep, relentless analysis we do here, become a channel member today. Your support is what allows us to keep pushing the boundaries on these intense, documentary-style explainers. Okay, let's dive into this.
Everything changed in a matter of seconds. Seriously, I want you to put yourself inside that stadium at the bitter end of the 2025 season. Imagine the deafening roar of 70,000 desperate fans, and then all of that energy is entirely pulled out of the room, instantly replaced by this chilling, heavy, suffocating silence. You know, the Houston Texans had just tasted a 12-win regular season. They felt that intoxicating rush of real championship aspirations. I mean, the entire city was vibrating with the belief that this was finally their time. But then reality struck with a vicious, unyielding blow. When the final whistle blew on their divisional round game, the dream wasn't just delayed, it was violently shattered right in front of them. And that brings us to the ultimate terrifying question that is staring this front office directly in the face right now. Can you survive the crushing weight of being the franchise savior when the entire foundation suddenly starts trembling beneath you?
4. I really want you to let that number sink in. 4 interceptions. This wasn't just a bad game, right? It was a total systematic unraveling of the team's most prized possession on the biggest possible stage. CJ Stroud, the face of the franchise, the quarterback who showed undeniable, brilliant improvement all throughout the regular season, suddenly looked entirely lost against complex defensive shells. When you dive into the microscopic details of the tape, the nuances of this collapse are just staggering. Like on the first interception, the defense disguised a cover 2 shell, perfectly baiting Stroud into forcing an incredibly tight window throw on a curl route. Later on, his footwork just completely broke down under the immense pressure of a delayed A-gap blitz, causing the ball to sail on him. He finished that devastating season-ending game with a brutal 20 for 47 passing performance, barely a 42% completion rate, 4 absolutely back-breaking interceptions that effectively slammed the door shut on their season. And let me tell you, that is the bitter, lingering taste in the mouths of every single executive in that building right now.
But you know what makes that collapse even more terrifying? The number 5. Now, this wasn't from the loss. This was from the wildcard game they actually won just prior to their elimination. 5 fumbles. CJ Stroud put the football on the turf 5 separate times in a single playoff game. When you analyze the mechanics of those fumbles, it exposes a horrifying vulnerability. Stroud's pocket awareness was completely scrambled. He was taking blindside hits because he failed to feel the edge rushers collapsing the pocket. And honestly, more importantly, he was holding the ball dangerously low, failing to secure it high and tight when navigating through traffic. The cracks in this supposedly impenetrable foundation, yeah, they were already forming before the final collapse even happened. If Stroud is going to be the undisputed face of this franchise beyond this season, this undeniable sloppiness, this mechanical failure to protect the football under immense pressure, it simply cannot exist. That brings us to Section 1, the contract tension. So that staggering on-field collapse shifts our narrative directly into the boardroom, where a relentless ticking clock is echoing through the halls of the Texans front office, building this massive background anxiety. We're talking about the unforgiving financial reality of the NFL, where timing is literally everything. Think about it. CJ Stroud is entering year 4 of his career. He only has this season and a team option for 2027 remaining on his rookie deal. So what do? Do you pay him now based on those brilliant flashes, or do you wait because of that terrifying playoff collapse? The tension is suffocating, and it is magnified 1,000 times over by this number, right here, $150 million. The front office just handed a massive 3-year extension to defensive end Will Anderson Jr. And get this, out of that $150 million, a jaw-dropping $134 million is fully guaranteed. When you allocate that massive of a percentage of your salary cap to a defensive player, the structural flexibility of your entire 53-man roster drastically shrinks. They locked down their defensive superstar without a single moment's hesitation, signaling an absolute unwavering belief in his future.
And because of that, the psychological stakes currently at play in Houston are immense. On one side, you have the defensive anchor, Will Anderson Jr., sitting on ultimate generational financial security. Then on the other side, you have the franchise quarterback, the man playing the most vital position in all of professional sports, and he's left waiting in the shadows of his rookie deal. The front office has been incredibly reluctant to hand Stroud his extension. Imagine the psychological weight of that dynamic inside the locker room for a second. NFL locker rooms are complex ecosystems. When the front office speaks with their wallets, the players hear it loud and clear. Right now, the team is loudly whispering, "We completely believe in our defense," but the jury is still out on our quarterback.
Which leads us to Section 2, Fortifying Mo Wall.
So, how exactly does a front office react when they realize their most valuable yet suddenly vulnerable asset is just twisting in the wind? Well, they react with frantic, desperate, and highly calculated action. You don't just pull your quarterback aside and ask him to fix his turnover issues. You have to build an absolute impenetrable fortress around him. The front office looked at the 23 sacks Stroud absorbed last year and decided, okay, we need perfect protection. In free agency, they aggressively poached tackle Braden Smith away from their division rival, the Indianapolis Colts. Smith possesses an elite pass-blocking win rate, specifically neutralizing wide 9 defensive ends. Then, they went out and signed the absolute mauler of a guard, Wyatt Teller, from the Cleveland Browns. Teller plays with this violent, physical run-blocking style, and he's known for literally pancaking linebackers at the second level. And they didn't stop there. In the draft, they used the 26th overall pick to secure Georgia Tech guard Keelan Rutledge. When you watch Rutledge's college tape, his anchor is unmovable and his punch timing disrupts defensive tackles instantly. They are building a physical, punishing wall of humanity designed for one singular purpose: to give CJ Stroud all the time in the world.
Now for Section 3, the ground assault. Because here's the thing, a wall, no matter how thick it is completely useless if you don't have a weapon to fire from behind it. But when your aerial attack shows fatal flaws in the bitter winter playoffs, you need a different kind of weapon altogether. You need a battering ram. The front office realized that to truly protect Stroud from the terrifying weight of the franchise, they had to be able to take the ball out of his hands in critical moments. So the Texans executed a massive, ruthless trade with the Detroit Lions. They sent away Juice Scruggs and a 4th-round pick to acquire David Montgomery. This isn't just adding a player, guys. This is importing an entire physical identity. Montgomery is a true, undeniable bell cow running back. He doesn't just run, he drops his pads and he initiates contact. His yards after contact metrics are staggering. When a bell cow back consistently punishes the interior defensive line over and over, it physically exhausts defensive tackles by the 4th quarter, which fundamentally breaks the will of the opposing defense.
Let's actually break down the geometry of how this offense is about to fundamentally change. Just look at these numbers. Last year, the Texans' backfield was led by Woody Merks, and he was grinding out a completely uninspiring 3.6 yards per carry. Opposing defenses didn't respect it at all. They played 2 high safeties, practically daring Houston to run the ball. Now, contrast that with David Montgomery's numbers from 2025 while he was splitting reps in Detroit. 158 carries, 716 yards, a punishing 4.5 yards per carry, and 8 touchdowns. Now look at his 2026 projection as the undisputed lead back. It's a highly realistic 250 carries, churning out 1,125 yards and 13 touchdowns. When a defense has to respect that kind of violent, relentless production on the ground, the entire defensive geometry shifts. The linebackers bite heavily on play action. The safeties creep down into the box, shifting from cover 2 to cover 1 or cover 3, and suddenly, the deep third of the field entirely opens up for CJ Stroud to take vertical shots.
But you know, for all these brilliant, calculated moves, there is this lingering shadow of doubt hovering over the front office's strategy. Why in the world do you use the 59th overall pick in the 2nd round on Michigan tight end Marlon Klein? This is a wildly polarizing decision. Sure, Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz are returning, but the front office completely ignored adding elite receiving depth behind them. Klein only had 24 receptions in 2025. When you dive into his scouting report, he is just not an elite receiving threat. His route running is incredibly stiff, and advanced analytics show he even struggles to maintain leverage in his blocking assignments. It is a profoundly puzzling move when far superior receiving options, like tight end Max Clare, who possesses a massive couch radius, or true wide receivers like Malachi Fields and Jacoby Lane, players who can actually take the top off a defense, were sitting right there on the board. It leaves a quiet, creeping anxiety about whether they've truly given Stroud enough perimeter weapons to survive a high-scoring shootout.
Let's pivot to Section 4, an elite vanguard.
While the offense is shrouded in questions and immense pressure, the other side of the ball operates with a terrifying, cold-blooded certainty.
The Houston Texans defense in 2025 was an absolute nightmare for opposing coordinators. I mean, they didn't just play well, they systematically dismantled teams with a surgical, brutal efficiency. Let me put this into perspective. In 2025, out of the entire National Football League, the Houston Texans ranked second in points allowed, giving up a suffocating 17.4 points per game. They ranked absolute first in total yards allowed, completely choking out offenses to just 277.2 yards a game. And they ranked third in total turnovers, ripping the ball away 29 times. The way they achieved this was a masterclass in scheme. They used stunting defensive lines that confused blocking assignments, incredibly tight press man coverage on the outside, and disguised zone blitzes that constantly forced quarterbacks into rush decisions. They are an impenetrable wall, and having this immense power is exactly what gives the front office the leverage to make incredibly ruthless decisions. And that brings us to a decision that sent absolute shockwaves through the fan base. NFL insider Aaron Wilson reported this, quote, "There was never anything with Jadeveon Clowney. They have given the reps to Dominic Robinson and Dylan Horton." Let's dissect the cold, calculating analytics of this move for a second. Jadeveon Clowney, the former #1 overall pick, a literal local hero who had over 8 sacks last year, wanted to come back. He practically begged for a storybook reunion in Houston. But the Texans front office completely shut the door. No romance, no sentimentality. By choosing unproven internal youth in Dylan Horton and Dominic Robinson, they saved millions against the salary cap, money they are holding in reserve. They looked at a proven veteran and chose instead to rely entirely on raw developing talent that combined for just 2 sacks last year. It is a terrifyingly confident gamble that prioritizes cap health and emotional detachment over nostalgia. And honestly, they can afford to take that exact gamble because of the terrifying vanguard returning to the field. This isn't just a defense, it's a hit squad. First, you have Daniel Hunter returning after a monstrous 15-sack season. This is a player whose supernatural bend off the edge makes him nearly unblockable in one-on-one passing downs. Then you have Derek Stingley Jr. completely erasing elite receivers. His hip fluidity and ability to mirror routes in press man coverage resulted in 15 passes defended and 4 interceptions. Azeez Al-Shaair is an absolute heat-seeking missile in the middle of the field. His downhill read and react speed produced 103 tackles. And Jalen Petre, roaming the deep path, mirroring Stingley with 12 passes defended and 4 interceptions of his own. Every single level of this defense is loaded with premier talent. This core is locked in, they are angry, and they are ready to feast. And as if that returning cast wasn't horrifying enough for opposing quarterbacks, the Texans pulled off an absolute heist in the draft. Caden McDonald. This guy is a massive, incredibly powerful defensive tackle out of Ohio State. Major outlets had him heavily projected to go 18th overall in the first round, but the Texans patiently waited and they stole a true first-round talent all the way down at pick 36. When you break down McDonald's college tape, it is terrifying. His hand placement is flawless. His explosive get-off at the snap allows him to split gaps before the guard can even set his feet, and his ability to drop his hips and anchor against double teams is just elite. He logged 65 tackles and 9 for a loss last year alone. Now I want you to picture the schematic nightmare for an opposing offensive line. With Will Anderson Jr. and Daniel Hunter demanding double teams on the edges, Caden McDonald is going to be left completely one-on-one on the interior. He is projected to absolutely feast on those isolated matchups, capitalizing every single time a guard slides outside. It is just an overwhelming concentration of defensive power.
Which leads us to our final section, the ultimate test.
Now we have to zoom out to the massive scale of the battlefield, where all these chess pieces will finally collide. In the AFC South, the landscape has completely shifted. The Indianapolis Colts and the Tennessee Titans are fading entirely into the background noise. The entire division, the path to the playoffs, the path to a home playoff game, the path to the Lombardi Trophy itself, is narrowing down to a brutal 2-team bloodbath. It all builds to this ultimate cinematic climax, CJ Stroud versus Trevor Lawrence. 2 generational franchise quarterbacks on a high-speed, devastating collision course. On one side, you have Lawrence utilizing his lightning-quick release to counter the immense pressure of the Houston pass rush, trying to finally fulfill his draft destiny. On the other, CJ Stroud, heavily fortified by a massive, violent offensive line and a punishing running game, backed by a historically elite defense. But he's carrying the immense, crushing psychological weight of his expiring contract and his haunting playoff collapse. The chess match between these coordinators is going to be a masterclass in modern NFL strategy. Which leaves us with this final, striking question to linger in the back of your mind as we relentlessly approach kickoff. Is CJ Stroud the real deal? Or will the sheer, crushing weight of the Houston Texans franchise finally break him, turning the dream of 2027 blue, white, and red confetti into another haunting nightmare? The stage is set.
The pieces are all on the board. The tape does not lie, and there is absolutely nowhere left to hide. If you felt the intensity of this breakdown and you craved this level of cinematic, unfiltered analysis, then this is exactly where you belong. You've been watching NFL Nexus. Hit that subscribe button right now. Like this explainer so the algorithm knows you want the real, deep football truths. Comment below. I want you to tell me right now, will Stroud survive the pressure or is he going to crack? And if you want to become a true part of this journey, support our work by becoming a channel member today. The season is almost here. We'll see you in the next explainer.